Hey guys, this is Jay here with FantasyLabs to bring you the MLB Daily Fantasy Flex. I'm joined here with Pete to break down this Friday, April 22nd, 15-game slate. We actually got a nice full 15-gamer, no day games. They're all the same slate starting at normal time. So, Pete, aside from your heater with some of these jelly bean wagers on NBA playoffs, how are you feeling tonight?
Great, man. Excited for the big slate. Obviously, ready for this pod. Should be a lot of fun. And you know, we had some fun jelly beans watching the jelly bean wagers with the NBA playoffs, which is always fun and definitely a great time of year. You also surprised me today, Jay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a weird encounter. We were trying to meet up, and you're like, "Dude, I got to go to BC. It's gonna take me like 25 minutes." Like, I knew it was weird, but I couldn't quite nail it down.
Yeah, we tricked you good. Justin flew in town this morning. We went to meet up with Pete. We got the kind of NBA crew in town. John met up with us since he moved here. Like I think he was homeless before. He brought his backpack, so had a good time tonight, sweating the games. Had some positive jelly bean action going. So yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun, and hopefully we can carry that into the baseball slate tomorrow because a lot of people are
Absolutely. And
games.
yeah, I got to say, man, after I left, I do apologize taking so long to start this pod, but I had a fierce candy craving. And there's only one way to cure that. That's to eat all the candy.
You buy some rips?
Oh, dude. I mean, where are they? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got, all,
I'm
I
pretty
got,
jealous of that.
yeah, I got all kinds of goodies. It's going to last, a
Well,
couple hours.
let's do it real quick, Jay. I mean, let's do the power ranks of
The
candy.
power. I mean, man,
Power rankings.
you can't forget the classic, some Peachios, man. We kind of debated, me, Justin, and John on Peachios versus Appelos. I think we kind of all agreed on the Peachios. Keep it OG.
But what's your top three? Top three candies.
I'm very high on Rips, man. I think you are as well. You put me on the spot. Top three? I don't even. I mean, I got a lot, man, but I think these got to be up there too in the mix. Merit Extremes, for sure. I'm really high on Now and Laters when they're just perfect hardness, you could say. So I don't know. I'm all about that gummy, chewy, the good stuff.
Yeah. What were your Sour Patch up there for you?
Sour Patches, I think, is a little bit overrated.
I figured you'd say that. Yeah. So the only chocolate one that makes it into mine is Reese's for sure. Rips is number one. A Reese's mini cup. I don't know, man. I've had quite a few of those.
No, those are good. I'm also really high on these Milky Way Midnights. I just got a craving for the dark chocolate. It's always really good. So any candy with the dark chocolate is a
Yeah,
good too, for
and
sure.
it matches your lifestyle. Milky Way Midnight, huh?
Always up at midnight. It's well past midnight right now, recording this pod. But let's get off topic here a little bit since we were talking about the right stuff. But let's talk some baseball. We have some ridiculous tournaments on this slate on DraftKings. I don't know if you've checked them out yet, but we have the fastball and the curveball, two incredible names. I think whoever made these names needs like at least 20% equity in DK. I think is fair. But the fastball is a $33 buy-in with 100K to first, and then the curveball is a $333 buy-in with 100K to first. Obviously, a lot less people. So, Pete, I know you're firing away in both tournaments. Let's kind of jump into our first topic here and look at kind of Vegas data in terms of maybe these tournaments and then how you kind of utilize them in cash a little bit.
Right. So there's a bunch of high team totals tomorrow. Obviously, we have Course Field, which I'm biased. I'm always going to play guys from this game. We'll see how much I use them in tournaments, but super high team totals with Colorado and the Dodgers. In addition to that, you have some other high team totals like the Astros. The White Sox have a decent team total. Milwaukee 4.5. The Cubs coming out scoring a ton of runs tonight. Have another high team total while we're recording this. So I think there's a lot of good spots, which is nice. Definitely opportunities to get some higher, Vegas total teams with lower ownership because there's so many options. And then, some of these lower team totals are going to be super low owned. So there's
Hmm.
probably a pretty good opportunity to find one of these contrarian stacks, especially away from Coors Field. So
Yeah.
we'll talk more about who we like specifically for that. But
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, I think any time you have course field on a slate, that's kind of where you start. looking at the Vegas lines. I mean, the Dodgers are implied at 5.8 runs right now. The Rockies at 5.3. So clearly those are the two highest implied total teams. So you kind of start there, and then, I think we'll dig in deeper with kind of some tournament strategy of what to do with some of these implied totals. So before we get there, let's go over some pitching real quick on this slate. We got 15 games, which is I don't know if we've had a full slate yet on any of these pods, because there's always usually some day games, especially this early in the season with kind of the weird schedule. So obviously there are a lot of pitchers to kind of look at. I think we have some guys that kind of stand out in cash. You want to kind of kick off a few pitchers you're looking at on this slate?
Yeah, I think Lester's a really good option. He's a big favorite against the Reds. We'll see if the weather's good there, but assuming that it is, obviously we're recording late here on Thursday night, but assuming the weather's good, I think that Lester's a pretty good play. Although it is scary, Billy Hamilton could probably get a few steals if he got on base versus Lester and the Cubs. But I think he's one of the chalkier starting pitchers for the slate. I know there's some guys that you like in addition to him. The one guy I know for sure that I'm going to fade is Sonny Gray. I know we'll talk about that in a second, but tell me why you like. I know you like Gio. Why are you high on him?
Yeah, so one guy I'm looking at is Gio. I don't mind the price. He's facing the Twins, who are implied to score just 3.2 runs. Gio has an 8.9 strikeouts per 9. Right? He's honestly, he is though one of the most terrifying pitchers I think to roster, kind of in the league over the past few years, because he has a high whip and he definitely has some command issues sometimes. So he's a really tilting pitcher to watch,
right.
Like actually watch him pitch. He's a guy where you roster him and then you just like take a nap and wake up in a couple hours and just check how much you've lost or how much you've won, and just don't even get into the pitch by pitch of Gio, because it's definitely pretty tilting. I mean, he's a guy who can like walk in 2 runs in a row and stuff. So, but I like the spot. Joe Mauer is expected to sit this game out as well, so I think that kind of hurts the overall value of the Twins. So I'm looking at him as kind of a little bit more affordable option. I don't think he'll be as chalky. Another guy I'm looking at, and this is kind of for my teams where I will be kind of stacking the Coors Field hitters, whether it's the Dodgers or the Rockies. I like getting a lot of exposure to them, so you kind of have to save a pitcher because a lot of these guys are expensive. So a guy I'm looking at to save salary is Nick Tropiano, just 6,100 on DraftKings. He's a 9.1 strikeouts per 9 rate. So I think he'll give us that ability to afford some of these really expensive bats while offering us upside with his high strikeout rate, which is the most important thing that I look for in pitchers to target.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. If you're going to look to some mid-tiers guys as well, I think Jose Quintana deserves a little consideration. It's a tough park, but he's pitched pretty well so far. And against Texas, they have a low team total. I think Quintana is not a lead option, but he certainly is a fine option. I think he's getting a decent amount of Ks. He's like 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that range every game. And that's kind of what he's been. But in this spot here, I think he'll be a little bit lower owned, and it's tough. We're kind of in the middle of the deeper part of the rotation, so you don't have any options. And then in addition to that, the polarizing guy for me is Jeff Samardzija. Great line for him right now, but Jeff Samardzija can be tilting to take for sure. So we'll see. He's another mid-tier, kind of on the lower end, I guess. That's not awful.
Yeah, definitely. And that is a good point. We do kind of have a bunch of mid-tier type pitchers, not a lot of aces really going on this slate. Speaking of aces, a guy I'm looking at fading kind of on this slate overall is King Felix Hernandez. I think his price tag is pretty expensive, so that's a reason alone. I kind of want to focus on bats on this slate with some of these mid-tier pitchers popping up here and there. So, and then you add the fact that he's facing the Angels, who have the second lowest strikeout per 9 rate out of any team on this entire slate. So if you kind of limit Felix's strikeout upside due to his high price, I'm not really enjoying that too much for tournaments. So he's kind of a guy I'm either going to have very limited exposure to or just kind of fade altogether.
Yeah, I like fading him, and I'm also going to fade Sonny Gray, which I alluded to as well. Really tough spot against the Blue Jays, and I just am not as big a believer in Sonny Gray. So he's a guy that might have name recognition for some people, and they might still take him, but for me, he's an easy fade tomorrow.
Agree. All right, let's keep it moving. Let's jump into some hitters on this slate. It kind of goes without saying we obviously like a lot of exposure to Coors Field, whether it's getting exposure in cash, which I think is necessary, and then kind of mixing and matching exposure in tournaments. So who are a couple guys you're looking at just overall on this slate to roster?
Oh, I'm all over Trevor Story.
Oh, yeah.
Cargo tomorrow at only 3.7K. I'm not sure what format I'll use him in for sure. Obviously, it's not a great matchup going lefty-lefty, but at home at Coors Field, if they get to Casimir a little bit, they'll be relievers, and Cargo has been looking good.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, hitting the ball incredibly hard. And, yeah, I agree. I think people – it's a weird situation. He's so cheap. He's clearly underpriced. He's facing a lefty. So I don't know how people will maybe take that, if his ownership will be lowered because he's facing lefty, or if it'll be higher because he's so cheap, or if it will kind of neutralize. So, yeah, I like getting exposure to him in both formats a little bit, especially due to that cheap price on DraftKings.
All those guys for sure.
Yeah. One guy I'm looking at on this slate also in this game is Ryan Rayburn. I'm hoping he'll get the start this game and actually see some playing time versus a lefty. So I'm expecting to play. He does have a 412 WOBA and 257 ISO against lefties. So he's a guy I'm looking at getting a lot of exposure really as a kind of a more affordable option to get a piece of this game. And then another guy I'm very intrigued in is Corey Seager. He's 1K less than your boy, Trevor Story, same position. So I don't know. Who do you think will carry lower ownership between Seager and Story?
I think Story will be lower owned just because of the price of Seager. All the Dodgers are elite plays.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I think you can stack the game pretty easily. You take a lot of the Dodgers. Rayburn's hopefully in the lineup. Take someone like Mark Reynolds, who I like a lot. And you can get a lot of exposure to this game. Yeah, I agree. And I think talking about Story and Seager, I want more tournament exposure to who I think will be lower owned, because I obviously like both a lot in this spot, kind of regardless in price when you're kind of stacking them. I want the more contrarian play, I guess, and I think they will both kind of carry high ownerships, but I like being over on the guy where everybody else is going to be under. In cash, I think if you can afford Story pretty easily, then I certainly don't mind going him, and then at the same time, I don't mind saving the salary and going Seager. So those are kind of two hitters I'm looking at. And obviously, the point we're alluding to is to definitely get exposure in this game, definitely in cash. And then I think if you're making multiple tournament lineups, I think you can still, with these high implied totals, I think you still want exposure to them. Just maybe mix it up with some contrarian options as well. So speaking of, this game, getting exposure to these bats, they obviously carry pretty hefty price tags. Let's jump into some value hitters that kind of allow us to maybe afford some of these high-priced Dodgers and Rockies guys. So who are a couple cheap hitters you're looking at on the slate? So I think Drury's going to be one of the guys, if he's in the lineup, that I really want exposure to. I have a stat on him. And again, these cheap guys are a little tougher to nail the night before just because it depends on the lineup. But I like him. And then whoever's leading out for the Nationals, whether it's Michael Taylor or Decker, I think those are a nice plays against Kyle Gibson. Especially if Suzuki's back behind the plate, that's going to be a great running situation. And I think you get pretty good value for a leadoff hitter in that spot. Who are some cheap guys that you like? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I completely agree. A guy I'm looking at who's dirt cheap on FanDuel is Steve Pearce. I'm fully expecting him. I think he's for sure going to play again, facing a lefty in CC Sabathia. He's likely to hit cleanup. He's a platoon player, just 2,100 on FanDuel. So it's a guy I'm looking at in the slate overall where I kind of want all the exposure. I like saving a lot on a guy like him with his upside, and then kind of stacking high-priced hitters, and then maybe get Lester or some of these high-priced pitchers as well. So he's a guy I think who opens up a lot of salary. And then another guy at the same price is Preston Tucker, just 2,100 on FanDuel. A guy, I'm definitely looking at as well to save money, to kind of pay it for pitching or loading up on Coors Field bats with the rest of your lineup. So Preston Tucker has a 341 WOBA and a 243 ISO against righties. Facing Stephen Wright, the Astros are projected to score 5 runs. So if he's in the lineup, of course, like Pete talked about, some of these value guys, it's tough to kind of get a read on if they're going to play or not. You can make an educated guess and go off previous lineups and kind of who's playing where. So I think Preston Tucker's in a spot, at least for now, where I expect him to see a bit more playing time against righties, and then Evan Gattis a bit more playing time against lefties. But this is something you want to obviously make sure you get confirmation that Tucker is starting kind of before loading up on him. Let's keep it moving on to the next topic and kind of discuss stacks. I think the two clear ones we have at Coors Field. What are some stacks you're looking at overall in the slate? Kind of how are you attacking some of these tournaments?
I think the Mets could be a really sneaky stack on the road here. Not the best park, and they're not going to have the highest team total because of that, but they have a lot of power in that lineup. Puerto, Granderson, Cespedes, even Wright had a double dong, although he played awful the other night. Lucas Duda's been hot. I really like this spot for the Mets overall, and I think they'll come in with a lot lower ownership. Another road team that I like, but will probably have a lot of ownership is the Cubs. Obviously, it goes without saying I should mention this first. My favorite stack of the day is the Rockies. Everyone's going to be on the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Cheaper. And I will be on the Rockies, I think.
Yep. Yeah, you take the lower implied team total at Coors Field, and you always see lower ownership. So, I think it's a great strategy. I've seen you definitely, take down some loot with Rocky stacks where people are overlooking them quite a bit at home, especially going against a team that's implied to score a half run more than them, where people just gravitate immediately. So, yeah, I love that call, and it's a very obvious call that's a good stack, but it's one that can pay off huge dividends, kind of fading the Dodgers. And I think that with the Dodgers, obviously I like the stack. I think I recommend them for maybe some of these higher buy-in tournaments, maybe smaller field tournaments, where you kind of get into the mind games of these specific DFS players who kind of have that train of thought as well, where they're thinking, okay, the Dodgers are going to be the highest owned team, I'm going to fade them. So you might see some potential lower ownership in some of these higher buy-in tournaments for the Dodgers. When you get into the large field tournaments, I think it's pretty obvious that the ownership of the Dodgers will be the highest on stack. So a stack I'm looking at to be a bit contrarian in these large field tournaments is the Tigers. It's one that I like a lot. Facing Josh Tomlin, who gives up a lot of home runs, which I definitely like, getting exposure to the bats facing him. So I'm looking at getting exposure through the Tigers 1 through 7 hitters, kind of mixing and matching, whether it's 1 through 4, 2 through 5, maybe some 1, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And then another stacking strategy I kind of like on the slate, we got some games with potential of rain, so I like stacking the offense in some of these games. So like the Cubs, for example, the Mets, the Giants too. I definitely like getting a piece of these teams due to lowered ownership for fear of postponement for some people. So I think there's definitely value there to look at some of these rain games and kind of assume it's on the side of it's more likely to be played all the way through. There might be delays, but you'll probably get the 9 innings. So that's another stack I like as well. Let's move on to what do you got for the stat of the day, Pete?
So my stat of the day goes to Drury. This is one of my favorite things that I like to do on FantasyLabs. So just sort by ISO differential, for example. And Brandon Drury is a guy against Nice here who has an extremely high ISO differential. I hope he plays tomorrow. He has a lot of nice pro trends. But it's great to identify a player who's cheap because he only hits one-handedness well. And that's something to take advantage of. And especially at his price tag, I think he's a great play. So I talked about it before. I think the ISO diff is a great way to kind of look at a player and identify guys who might be good values on the day because they're most likely a platoon player or someone who struggles really badly against another handedness. So I like that stat a lot. I sort by it on a daily basis to identify good tournament plays. And Drury is definitely popping. I hope he has a high spot in the order tomorrow.
I do too. I'd love to get some exposure. Yeah, good call. Stat I was looking at earlier was Colin McHugh having an average fastball speed differential of minus 2.3 miles per hour so far this season compared to last, which I think is pretty significant. We've seen him have a few bad games. He did have a solid game against the Royals, but overall, that fastball speed is down. So I think looking at that, I'm going to have pretty limited turning exposure, if any, to McHugh. And then I don't mind getting some Red Sox exposure as well, maybe a few Red Sox stacks, kind of trying to capitalize on his decreased velocity so far this season. And then that's a stat I like looking at, and kind of as the season progresses is something that, you can look at even deeper and will be more significant when we get a few games under our belt as well. All right, let's hear your bold call of the day for this slate.
All right, so my bold call of the day is that Sano is going to hit a home run off Gio Gonzalez. But this brings me to one of my new kind of things I'm identifying that really good tournament players are doing. And that's taking guys who are really talented with a lot of upside who might not be in the best spot. So basically, like Sano, low team total, not the best park, but he's still a guy with elite power. And against Gio, wouldn't surprise me if he hit a home run. So trying to find the guys who are in tough spots. So another example tomorrow might be like Mike Trout versus Felix Hernandez. Taking those elite skill players that still have a ton of upside and not the best spots, and getting them at a really, really low ownership because people aren't willing to spend for them in those spots. So I'm looking at Sano. I think a lot of people are going to be focused on a couple games and a couple spots in particular. I think there's a lot of opportunity to employ this new strategy that I see other really successful players using, of playing these studs in tournaments and not the most ideal spot. So that's what I call the day. To know
I like it. I just to kind of piggyback on that sentiment as well. I think that's a great strategy because a lot of guys look at these low team totals and they think of it in terms of stacking, and they might say, okay, do I really want to stack this team? Kind of have Trout as a stack, so you get 4 guys, but instead, maybe you do want to pinpoint one player from that team, Sano, Trout, and just take them on these low total teams. You don't need to think of every team in terms of stacking. You can pick and choose these low-owned singular players. So I like that strategy a lot. My bold call of the day is that a Coors Field stack won't ship the 100K in either tournament.
All right. Well,
so
that's bad news for me.
Well, I'm gonna have them too. That's just my bold call. And I think a contrarian stack will come out on top in the end in both tournaments, and we'll see. So I think the high ownership and not really the downside, but just a lot of people will kind of have similar lineups. So I think there are gonna be some overlooked teams, some contrarian teams that kind of go off, and I think I don't know. I guess I gotta stipulate. I think no more than 2 players on either team in the winning lineup. So they might have like Arenado and Story. That's my revised bold call of the day.
Oh, I love it.
But we'll see, man. I wish we got a homestand for the Rockies. We got to hit up one of these games, stack the opposing team and the Rockies, or whichever team has a lower implied team total.
Dude, that's what you go to the Rockies.
Oh yeah.
Stack at multiple different times in different ways, so you have exposure to every hitter. So every bat's exciting. You'll absolutely.
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go Saturday.
Yeah, I want to go as well. And sorry for hopping on the pod here, guys, but it's a lot of fun, Jay. We have a good weekend of Coors Field in front of us. NBA playoffs are still ticking. What are you most excited for in the next couple of weeks here with sports, Jay?
I'm most excited, I think, for NBA. We're still so early in the MLB season, we have some good tournaments though, so I think I'm equally as excited. Like these DraftKings tournaments tomorrow are awesome, but I'm pretty sure I'm flying to the Bay to go see a Western Conference final. Assuming that the Warriors get there. They did lose one tonight, but we can expect Steph back next game. So I'm definitely excited for the Western Conference Finals, NBA Finals next few weeks and whatnot, month I guess. So, and then just a lot of baseball, man. We're getting in the dog days of summer coming up here soon. Lots of baseball, lots of Rockies games to go to, lots of stacking. So, yeah, I'm definitely excited for it all.
Oh yeah, stack Coors, make some money tomorrow, guys. Hope to see FantasyLabs subscribers at the top of the leaderboard.
Yep,
Jay,
as always. Not really, man. Enjoy this 15-game slate, everybody. Good luck. We'll have a pod ready for the Monday, April 25th slate for you guys, and I'm out. I got to eat a lot of candy before I go to sleep. So, good luck, everybody, on this slate, and we'll see you guys soon.